Hello and welcome to Revenge of the Drive-In, the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss two movies randomly selected from a list of over 2,000. This week's movies are the 1971 classic Don Siegel film Dirty Harry and the 1987 schlock classic from Jim Wynorski, Deathstalker II. I am your host Patrick, and I am joined as usual by
Jim. Hello everybody. Hello Patrick.
Way back when we covered the first Deathstalker, which famously you loved that movie.
I still stand by it, yes.
And I don't know why. I did not like it. I have said that Deathstalker 2 is the superior Deathstalker film. It's the best of the four, in my opinion. I'm curious to hear if you'll agree with that. But, before we get into that, we can talk some Dirty Harry. This is our second Clint Eastwood picture.
Some filthy
after
Harold.
A Fistful of Dollars. So you know me, I love the 70s gritty cop/vigilante stuff. Death Wish, a lot of the blaxploitation movies kind of fall into that. Taxi Driver, I would kind of throw into that. Anything. The 70s was a filthy decade. And anything that really takes advantage of that, I just love. And Dirty Harry's probably not the best of those movies. Like, again, if we're including Taxi Driver, I think it's safe to say Dirty Harry's not better than Taxi Driver. I'm going to say I like it more than Taxi Driver, and I like it more than Shaft and Death Wish and Superfly. I like it better than all those movies, But had you seen Dirty Harry before?
Yes, many times. And what? And the other ones, The Enforcer and...
Magnum Force is the second one.
Okay.
The Enforcer is the third.
Okay.
Sudden Impact is the fourth. That's the first Dirty Harry movie in the 80s. That's the one that famously has the "Go ahead, make my day" line.
Yes.
I think a lot of people who don't know better would probably be watching this movie and go like, wait a second, it's Dirty Harry, and he doesn't say, "Go ahead, make my day." Like, what I thought he said that. He does. It's just 12 years later he says it.
Yeah, his way more famous line was about having the a bullet in the chamber or not.
Yeah, that's the thing. He still gets classic lines in this movie. Maybe not quite as classic as "Go ahead, make my day," but to my knowledge, at least, this line is "Do you feel lucky?" stuff. To my knowledge, is at least original in this movie. "Go ahead, make my day" appeared on film before it appeared in Sudden Impact, the Dirty Harry movie. It appears in Vice Squad, which came out like a year or two before that movie. So I don't know if that was a conscious ripoff or, it's really weird. I always, me, and we just talked about the Terminator recently, and I like a lot of James Cameron movies. I love the original Titanic. When I was watching Twin Peaks for the first time 10 years ago at this point, there's a line, I think it's a Laura Flynn Boyle line. She says, "I'd rather be his whore than your wife or your girlfriend," or whatever. And it's like, what? That's Titanic used that line. Like, and then this came out like a few years before Titanic, obviously. But Billy Zane was in Twin Peaks, so maybe he should have known.
Well, the thing I want to say about Dirty Harry is that the movie looks so cool and manly. And Clint Eastwood is such a man in this movie.
Sure.
I think if you're not familiar with this movie, I think the way it starts off might trick you into thinking it would be like more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like highbrow, like when there's that great opening shot of him on the rooftop swimming pool with like the dead woman. And she's wearing like this cool like 70s swimsuit.
Well, it's not the opening shot,
You're right,
but
yes.
It's the first shot with him. Yeah,
opening scene, I should say.
Yeah,
there's this dead woman, and he's kind of crouched down, and then you have this cool 70s font, Dirty Harry, and like it looks super classy, like a classy detective movie.
No, you're screwing it up. I was going to talk about this.
Oh, sorry.
So,
yes, go on. Never mind then.
This is obviously thought out, but the first time we see Clint Eastwood, he steps out of the door on the rooftop. The title, Dirty Harry, comes up. When it cuts to a different angle and he crouches down by the woman, Clint Eastwood comes up. So it's Clint Eastwood that shows up, not Dirty Harry. You're reversing the two.
Oops.
But can you have Dirty Harry without Clint Eastwood, though? That's the question. This is... I love Clint Eastwood. He's been one of my favorite actors for a long time. I just think he was such a... I think a lot of people don't give him enough credit as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people came to respect him later on when he was like older, like Unforgiven on, and they're like, oh yeah, he's a pretty good actor. But he was always a good actor. It's just he played different kinds of roles when he was younger. He was allowed to show more vulnerability as he got older, but he's had such an amazing career, obviously, both acting and directing. I really think you can look at his career and say he's got like 3 or 4 signature roles, right? Because he's got The Man with No Name, he's got Dirty Harry, and I think for any other actor, if you make Unforgiven, it wins a bunch of Academy Awards, I think that's your signature role, and for him, it's like, it's not an afterthought. That's his signature film as a director, but as far as an actor, that you almost forget about it. So, I don't know. An amazing career. He's great in this movie. I mean, it's not a complicated role. He's not given anything too difficult. But he's awesome. I mean, you completely believe him as that character.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and there's also something else that's kind of funny about Dirty Harry, and it's that...
Oh, this movie's hilarious at times. It really is.
Well, it's really neat that in the world that we live in, you can make a joke about somebody who's, like, let's say trying to be sneaky, or I'm sure there's like jokes in television or other movies where a character says to somebody who's trying to be sneaky, what are you, James Bond? You know, who do you think you are, James Bond? And everybody gets that joke. James Bond, super secret, awesome British spy, right?
I would say the reference would be less about being sneaky and more about being, like, womanizing. But
yes, okay,
sure.
Yeah. But
like, this guy thinks he's James Bond because he's wearing a suit and he's hitting on a woman. You know, that would be the reference.
Yeah.
But I see what you're doing, because that same Dirty Harry reference, has made it into pop culture in Ferris Bueller.
That is why I have got to catch him this time, to show these kids that the example he sets is a first-class ticket to nowhere.
Oh, Ed, you sounded like Dirty Harry just then.
Exactly, and it's really interesting when you can have such an iconic character that lives on forever in pop culture. That will always be something, even if people don't understand what it means, people will always say, oh, well, who do you think you are, Dirty Harry? You know?
Yeah. Also, I would say you can make that same reference and say, who do you think you are, Clint Eastwood? Yeah. Because I think Clint Eastwood had made such a career off of, again, he's done more than this, but he had such an incredible career just playing this, like, badass guy, whether it's Dirty Harry or The Man with No Name or Josie Wales or whatever, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
This is about a movie about a couple of killers. Harry Callahan. And a homicidal maniac. The one with the badge is Harry. Halt! Reasons they called him Dirty Harry. And he kept inventing new ones.
The movie begins with a killer atop a rooftop. He is played by Andy Robinson, or Andrew Robinson, who we remember from Hellraiser. He plays the father in Hellraiser, who's eventually possessed by the uncle, and he gets torn to pieces. He's also like a sadistic barber in Child's Play 3. So I think, like, a lot of horror fans would be like, oh, yeah, it's that one guy from Hellraiser, but, like, this is far and away his most significant role. He plays the Scorpio Killer. Like I said, this movie comes out in 1971. It's set in San Francisco. When was Zodiac? Was that 68, 69? It was like a few years before this. Yeah. And it's clearly inspired by that. I don't know much about the Zodiac Killer stuff, but I know enough just watching this movie that, they're doing a Zodiac thing. But he's Scorpio. It's a more specific part of the Zodiac calendar. He is atop a rooftop with his sniper rifle, and he shoots a woman who is swimming. We then are introduced to Clint Eastwood walking around in his suit and sweater underneath the suit, looking at the body, and then he figures out where the shot was fired from, and he goes to a rooftop of another building and finds the bullet casings as well as a note, which he brings to his chief and also the mayor. The mayor, of course, we've seen him on this podcast not too long ago, is John Vernon, Dean Wormer from Animal House.
Oh!
How did you not recognize him? He looks exactly the same.
Well, I was like, yeah, he looks familiar. I was like, I don't know who he is. Even the name was familiar in the credits, and I was like, John Vernon. I've heard that name somewhere before.
I thought he was Dirty Harry's boss. I thought he was a chief. I had forgotten he was the mayor. But I'm going to say, of all the movies I've seen John Vernon in, this is probably the most toned down he ever is.
Yeah, I mean, he's still kind of an asshole.
A little bit, but I mean, I think you see these scenes, I think Harry's being the bigger asshole.
Yeah, he's just playing off, Dirty Harry. Yeah, of course.
I've seen him play prison wardens, chiefs of police, like in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like, he's always an authority figure. He's usually angry. He was Rip Torn before Rip Torn, I'm gonna say. And I mean, Rip Torn was around back then, but Rip Torn was kind of a younger guy, like talking like Men in Black Rip Torn, or Freddy got fingered Rip Torn, like where he's just yelling at people. And John Vernon was like the 70s and 80s version of that, I think. And he's always entertaining, although, like I said, a little toned down in this movie.
By the way, he was in Josie Wales.
Great movie. We won't be covering it. Actually kind of similar to Dirty Harry in that I think you can look at that movie, you can watch that movie, you can watch Dirty Harry and say, this is a great movie about one of the worst human beings that you can possibly imagine. And I think there's something interesting about movies like that I guess, I mean, Dirty Harry is an anti-hero, Josie Wales is an anti-hero to a certain extent, and not the same way that, like, Travis Bickle is in Taxi Driver, I wouldn't say, or like Michael Corleone, because you want to root for. Well, again, at least in this movie, I'm diverting from Josie Wales a little bit because he's just like a Confederate guy who just like wages his own personal war against. He just like refuses to surrender, so it's a little bit different. But Dirty Harry, like you're rooting for him, and yet he's a terrible human being, and I think this movie when it came out was super controversial for a number of reasons. One, it was super violent, which, watching it today, I would say it's brutal. It's not that violent,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not a cop, nor do I know any serial killers, but I feel like
the
way they depicted things was very true to real life.
Yeah, it feels realistic. The violence is brutal. It's not excessive. It's not like a Tarantino where, like, there's no style to the violence. The violence feels very straightforward, but at the same time, there's more violent stuff on television nowadays, obviously. I mean, This movie's 50 years old. Of course there is. But the movie's controversial for, more so than the violence, I really just think that the main character. This movie, and I think a lot of people looking at it now, because Clint Eastwood is conservative, he's a Republican, are going to look at that and make some conclusions about this movie that may or may not be supported by the actual movie. I think this movie is all about the debate over if Harry is necessary, if this asshole who doesn't follow rules, does not care about your Mirandas and your Escobedos and all that stuff. Like, if this is, I think the movie very much asks questions. I don't think it provides answers as to if this type of character is good for society, because obviously you're dealing with a Scorpio killer. This villain is like, what do you do with that when the killer doesn't play by rules? I guess as a society we have to expect police officers to follow the rules, but in some cases, is that realistic in every instance? I don't know.
Wasn't there didn't like the governor of Florida or something say who's the governor of Florida, Patrick? You're an American.
Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, didn't he say something a couple months ago that made it onto the news where he was like, you believe we should defund the police? Okay, well, next time somebody breaks into your house, call a crackhead.
Yeah, I've heard that quote. I didn't think it was DeSantis, and I also didn't think it was a recent. I think that's almost like, to me anyways, I've heard that quote for a long time. I thought that was one of those, like, the only thing that stops a good guy or a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. It was, to me, it was just like a mantra. Like, I feel like I've heard that. I didn't know it came from a specific person.
This movie kind of reminded me of that. Or, what was the famous line? The line from Batman? Batman is the hero Gotham needs, not the hero Gotham deserves.
Oh, from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, and that's kind of like Dirty Harry, But he also creates a lot of collateral damage, just like Batman.
Not as much as Superman, though.
No, definitely not as much
Zack
as Superman
films.
or like the Avengers or whatever, but about as much as Batman.
Another thing that I love about Dirty Harry is that it truly takes advantage of its setting. San Francisco, this is early 70s, so you're still kind of in that hippie thing, but it's, we're kind of moving on from it now. But San Francisco has completely changed as a city, as its culture. And it's this like bastion of liberalism, and then you just throw this like ultra conservative hard ass cop in the middle of it who's looking down on every single person that he's to protect and serve. I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, but he also respects people too. Like, there's a scene, I don't want to jump the gun here, but there's a scene where he gets beat up for people believing he was a peeping Tom, and he just says,
"Oh yeah," he kind of just accepts that.
Yeah, he's like,
yeah, he kind of just accepts that. He's like, yeah, I was in the wrong on this one. Is kind of what he's thinking, probably.
Maybe he's just misunderstood.
There's a lot of like people trying to kind of figure him out, and I don't mean like the villain, but it's more the people around him, because he's given a partner pretty early in the movie. What's the partner's name? Chico Gonzalez, yeah. And obviously Dirty Harry has a reputation, and Chico's wondering, okay, why do they call you Dirty Harry? And he doesn't really get a satisfying answer, and he kind of comes up with his own answer for it later on. And then, like, yeah, it's people are trying to figure out what makes Dirty Harry tick.
What
right?
makes Dirty Harry dirty?
Yeah, this could be a Barbara Walters interview. It's like, so, Harry Callahan, we haven't said his real name, I don't think yet. Harry Callahan, what makes you just so dirty?
Well, I like to beat my wife, and you have to smack her with an open palm.
There's also a couple hints. I suppose it's more than hints, but there's a couple little references to his wife is dead, and okay, how much of that is responsible for making him the man who he is? And I don't know, I like all of that stuff that it does with the Dirty Harry character, terrible human being that he is. He's obviously a bit more complicated than most people seem to think he is. Like, there's that one guy that says, like, well, that's the thing about Harry. He hates everyone equally. He doesn't play any favorites. He hates, and he's like saying all these horrible words that I'm not going to repeat, but he's like, he hates all these guys equally. Like, he's black people, Hispanics, like all this
Jews.
stuff, gays, straight. Anyways, back to this note. So in the note, Scorpio, who also uses bad words in the note, promises to kill one person every day until he's given $100,000, and this note is taken to the mayor.
Which is $1 million in 1971,
the chief of police. There's no way it rounds up that neatly, but okay. And he says in the first day he's going to kill either a Catholic priest or, we'll just say, black person. Okay, we'll keep it G here. So the mayor kind of surprisingly wants to go along with it. And it's like, okay, we'll pay him off, but we need more time. We need to get this message out there. And we see Scorpio the next time we see him. He's got this newspaper, and there's like because this hasn't been leaked to the press, so they're able to just send a message in the personal ads in the newspaper to Scorpio. We agree, but give us more time to get the money. But Scorpio's top of the rooftop. He's keeping an eye on a gay black man. He's going to shoot them, but then a police helicopter spots him and chases him away, and he just kind of gets away. We don't really see it. The next scene, I think, is Harry driving around with his new partner, Chico. Chico's like, I can't believe he escaped. And so it's a little awkward. It just happens, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how you make that scene where you have him escape when we establish just how many police officers are on top of roofs and everything. I don't know if you can make that scene realistic of him getting away, but it happened. So Harry and Chico are driving around, I guess, the red light district of San Francisco. I'm going to assume this is like how Times Square was in the 70s and 80s. It's whatever part of the city this is. It's probably nothing like this anymore. But, I love those old school 70s, 80s movies that show off these aspects of the city, because it's just like, I don't know, growing up like you and I did in the 90s and the 2000s in this super sanitized age, it's almost like hard to imagine cities used to be like this.
Yeah,
it's like this is only a step away from
from family restaurants.
Yes, but I was going to say this is like a step away from like rampant prostitution in like Game of Thrones, like the fantasy medieval city, and it's like this was like going on in America. This is kind of hard to believe, but
yeah, it's kind of fun. Well, it's fun to see. Right?
Oh, it's really fun. Yeah,
screen.
And you see more of it too later on. But we get a nice little teaser here of all the teasing going on, I suppose. And Chico thinks he spots a man in the street that fits Scorpio's description. So they get out of the car, and and Harry Callahan ends up peeping on a naked woman whose like boyfriend comes home or something. He's looking in because he thinks that's the apartment that this guy that may or may not have been Scorpio went in. So it's not like he's just trying to peep.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, he gets caught. And I guess there's just happens to be 3 or 4 people in the alley at this time who just kind of beat him up. And then Chico comes in, puts a stop to it, and he's like going to arrest them. But then Callahan's like, no, it's fine. Without admitting any wrongdoing, he kind of owns up to being a creep here, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, well, also, I like, what was her name? Like, Barbara? Like, all these guys who were, like, held up at gunpoint by Chico. They're like, well,
yeah, I can't remember her name.
Up. He was spying on hot Barbara. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I guess that passed for hot.
Yeah, and it's like, were they peeping? Is that why they caught him? Like, what were they doing in the alley?
I know, yeah.
Oh, and you know what? I'm only remembering this because I'm about to talk about my second favorite scene in the movie, but I skipped my favorite scene of the movie, the most famous scene of the movie.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, how did we miss that?
I love, again, everything that they do to establish Harry as a character. Like here, he's just driving around, and he stops at this shitty-looking 70s diner to get a hot dog. I want to draw attention to something, too, because there's something that I noticed watching this time. I don't know if I've noticed it in the past. But as he goes into that restaurant, it's right next door to a movie theater, and it's playing Play Misty for Me, which is a Clint Eastwood film,
No
which
way,
I think is
really?
kind of funny. And as he's getting his hot dog from this one guy at the diner, he asks him, like, is that one tan Ford or whatever still running? So he noticed it. He's in no position. He thinks something's going on, but he's in no position to just get out and stop whatever criminal activity is going on.
Yeah, because he needs his hot dog.
Yeah, he wants his hot dog. He's also like, you want backup on this scene, obviously. But he does tell the guy to call the police and tell them, whatever 411 is going on or whatever code number he uses. Mm-hmm. The bank alarm goes off and there are shots fired. And so Harry, with like hot dog in his mouth, is like, oh shit. And so he has to go out there and do something himself. He shoots a guy getting out of the bank, and then someone else jumps into the car, which was idling, and the car takes off, but he shoots the driver, and then he shoots the other person who gets out of the car. And there's the car obviously crashes. It sets off like
Fire hydrant.
I mean, it's just, I love this. I'm pretty sure this is a set, but this is an awesome city set. Then Harry goes up to the first person he shot and sees that guy who's been shot in like the shoulder is reaching for his shotgun, and Harry stops him, points his gun at him, and of course his gun is the .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, as he says. And he goes on this big old speech saying, I know what you're thinking. Did I fire 6 shots or only 5? Because the gun holds 6 shots. And he claims, well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've forgotten. But you can go ahead and test your luck. Do you feel lucky? He gives him an opportunity, like, you can test me to see if I have a bullet and reach for that shotgun, but if I do have one, you're dead. Or you can just not do it. And then, so he doesn't reach for the gun. Harry takes the gun, and then the guy on the ground, the criminal, is like, wait, I gots to know. And then Harry comes back, pulls the trigger, but no bullet comes out. So Harry knew all along, right? Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he is insane. I think both work for this character. I think he knew.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think he knew, but even if he didn't know, he wouldn't have cared. And that's what I think is really cool about this scene.
Yeah, and this is an incredible scene. Great character establishment. This first act, what this does for this Harry Callahan character is just like, oh man, I'm so on board. It's like I could watch 5 movies starring this guy, because that's exactly how many came out. And to be honest, the 5th one kind of sucks, but so maybe I'd only watch 4 movies with this guy.
Before we move off of this bank robbery scene, coming relatively fresh off the Terminator, in this movie, Dirty Harry is like a Terminator. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, there's always these like really cool shots of him like half shrouded.
He's the Terminator with a personality, though.
He is, yeah.
Because the Terminator couldn't do this "Do you feel lucky" thing. The Terminator would just shoot him.
Do you feel lucky?
Like Harry like makes a game out of it a little bit, even just to entertain himself. I don't know. I mean, it's entertaining the audience too, obviously.
Yeah, but he's just such a badass, because half the time he's like shrouded in mist from the fire hydrant and stuff, and you just see him unflinchingly firing his gun just at these robbers, through this water spout. It's like he's unstoppable, and he also gets pegged in the leg.
Yes, he gets shot here and basically doesn't react. He gets shot in the leg.
I know, and he just walks all over the place.
It's when he's getting the bullet removed that's the first of two references to his wife. Mm-hmm. Because the doctor says something like, oh, don't you ever get tired of this? Just go home to your wife, and then he just is like, oh, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. There's something going on with the wife, or something went on with the wife.
Yeah. And that scene also, great line, where the doctor's about to cut his pants off, and he goes, what are those for? He goes, I'm going to cut your pants off. Harry goes, well, for $29.95, I'll just take them off or something.
Yeah. Again, that is my favorite scene of the movie. It's one of the most famous movie speeches in history. But coming back to where we left off, my second favorite scene in the movie, there is a suicidal man atop a building. Harry and Chico just kind of stumble upon it. Harry's like, yeah, sure, I'll go up. I'll talk the guy down. And you're kind of thinking, like, if anyone knows Harry, they're like, oh, this isn't going to go well. And at this point, the character's been so well established that you as the audience, like, you're just waiting for something to go wrong here. You're expecting it to, because, and it does, but it also doesn't. This works out perfectly well, because Harry goes up there, and the guy's like, oh, don't even bother trying to talk me down from this. I've made my decision. And Harry's like, no, I'm not here to do that. I'm just trying to, I've handled a lot of these cases before. When people hit the ground, their bodies are just like, it's in a pulp, and it's really complicated, and so you would just save us a lot of time and effort if you just gave us your name and your address. so because even if you have your ID, we might not be able to identify your body or whatever. And the guy's like, you can see him, he's getting like terrified, like, oh, what? And then he eventually just says a few more things to him that insult him, and then the guy gets so pissed he goes to like jump at Harry, and then Harry grabs him. Harry's on top of one of those fire truck, like ladder things or whatever, like those platforms. And then while the guy's like holding on to the side of it, Harry just knocks him out and just holds on to him as they lower him down. It is hilarious.
Well, and the whole crowd below is like, you didn't have to hit him. Why did he hit him?
Yeah, it is so funny.
Well, it's great, yeah.
And then this is, so I mentioned earlier, Chico's wondering, okay, why do they call you Dirty Harry? When he finds out that he was peeping on a naked woman, he's like, oh, now I know why they call you Dirty Harry. But then this scene here is, Callahan goes to Chico, he says, well, now you know why they call me Dirty Harry. Every dirty job that comes along, like, I have to handle it because everybody else sucks, or everybody's incompetent. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So that's like that little kind of runner of, like, multiple explanations for his nickname, I guess.
Though he is a dirty peeping Tom as well.
Yes. So, amidst all this excitement, at one point, we didn't see it, but Scorpio did kill a black man, or a black kid. I think they say he's like 12 years old. They set up like a sting operation where they're trying to catch Scorpio outside of a Catholic church because they think now he's going to go kill a priest. And this is a really awesome scene where they do catch Scorpio, but they're shooting at him from over on this building, this rooftop, where they've got this big, tall pillar with just neon lights that say Jesus saves, and that's like spinning, and Scorpio eventually just shoots out all those lights so they can't really see him. Harry goes chasing him on foot, but he gets away. In this case, it's a lot more believable that he gets away than when he's being chased on a helicopter.
Yeah, and this whole night scene is just...
There's also a naked woman in this scene. There's right. Maybe
Yes.
this is the scene where Chico is like, oh, now I know, like, because he's got his like binoculars and he's looking, and there's like two people having sex or something in like some window, and he's like watching that.
Yeah, well, no, there's just like a naked woman walking around, and he's like, oh, well, you've earned it, little Harry. And then he just keeps on watching her instead of watching the rooftops.
Yeah.
And then that's when they realize that Scorpio is on the rooftop.
So Scorpio, again off screen, abducts a 14-year-old girl and claims that she's got enough oxygen. He's buried her alive, and he says that she's got enough oxygen to last until like tomorrow morning or whatever. But you need to give me all this money. You need to send one person unarmed to deliver the money to me at this dock somewhere. And it obviously ends up being Harry, though he doesn't carry a gun. Or no, he does carry a gun, but he also stows away like a stiletto knife. He tapes it to his ankle. And there's a line from, I don't know if it's his police chief or captain or like a lieutenant, says something like, "Oh, it's disgusting that a police officer should know how to use that weapon," or something. It's like, okay, it's like Harry's basically a gangbanger, basically, is what this guy's thinking.
Well, also, yeah, I'd rather you blow a hole in somebody's chest than stab them.
Yeah, you have a 44 Magnum. That's not police issued. He bought that himself, like, right? You probably wouldn't want a revolver, would you? I mean,
no, because it's only got 6 shots.
Yeah, well, and also just the time it takes to fire those shots, to fire consecutive shots, anyways. You know, from all those westerns, he works better with revolvers, right?
Well, exactly, and that's what he is like in this movie. He is like a modern cowboy, a San Francisco cowboy.
He's a gunslinger, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true. I mean, this is in some ways a change of pace for Eastwood because you're seeing him in a modern setting, but he's still kind of playing the same character in a lot of ways. There's a lot of similarities. So Harry Callahan shows up to this dock with the briefcase full of money, but there's no Scorpio. Instead, a payphone rings, and he basically is taken on this wild goose chase going from public payphone to public payphone, trying to hear from Scorpio, to hear where he's supposed to go next. It's a really tense scene. It's like pitch black outside. He's going in and out of buildings, getting to these phones. Eventually, he runs into Scorpio at a park. Scorpio holds him at gunpoint, tells him to drop his gun, and then starts beating him. And he says, like, you know, I'm actually just going to let her die. Like, I don't need thanks for the money, but I'm just going to kill her. Mm-hmm. Chico, who's been listening in because Callahan's wearing a wire, comes in and starts shooting at Scorpio despite Harry telling him not to. So there's a shootout. Chico gets shot but is still alive. Scorpio doesn't get shot because it's when he's distracted, when he's shooting at Chico, that Harry is able to get to his knife, and he stabs Scorpio in the leg. And Scorpio lets out the most blood-curdling scream, and it's an incredible noise. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then he stumbles away, and Harry, who's just been beaten to a pulp, basically just passes out here. But when Harry's back at the police station, they find out that a hospital has treated a man with a stab wound in the leg, which you'd think the hospital would have held on to this guy a little bit longer than they did.
Yeah.
Like, I know that the Scorpio stuff isn't out in the press, but if someone shows up with a gang-related wound, there's usually a lot of questions to ask at a hospital, right? Like, I know this has come up in TV, so maybe it's not accurate, but I've always heard, like, if you go to a hospital with a bullet wound, like, the police will automatically show up and ask you questions and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would think the same would be true of if you have a giant stiletto knife sticking out of your thigh, but what do I know?
Unless I just fell on it while I was walking down the stairs.
But even just having that knife, that's not just a typical, like, self-defense weapon. It's a giallo weapon.
Yeah.
That's a weapon you go around killing naked women in Rome with, you know, in the 70s and 80s. At any rate, Harry and Fatso, I don't recall Fatso's actual name, but that's what Harry calls him, go down to this hospital and they ask questions about this guy that they treated. And they're like, oh, he didn't give a name, but I seem to recognize him from the days when there was football at that stadium over there. He used to, like, hand out programs or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, I think he lives in that stadium. So for not asking the right questions, they somehow got a lot of information on this guy because, yes, he does live in the stadium. It's like a Rudy situation. If you watch the movie Rudy, he's like he's living in Notre Dame Stadium or whatever. So Harry goes over there. He breaks into his little living quarters, and then eventually finds him running, or like limp running across the football field. I don't know what stadium this is, by the way. I assume it's probably a college stadium, because I don't think it's... Because they said, like, when they used to play football there or something like that. So it's not like where the 49ers currently play. It's not Candlestick Park, which currently is in 1971. So I don't know if this is a college stadium or whatever, but Harry shoots him around midfield. Fatso turns on the lights, and then Harry goes over there and starts torturing the guy, trying to find out where this 14-year-old girl's being held. He steps on his, like, wound and presses it in, and it's a horrific scene. And Scorpio all this time is screaming that he demands a lawyer. You shot me. You're trying to kill me. He has rights. And then, so the next scene, Harry is informed from, I don't know, the district attorney or something, that Scorpio wasn't spitting. Scorpio is indeed going to be released because they cannot... And this is...
Well, actually, I think the next scene is we see the girl being pulled out of a well in front of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay, well, we'll get to that. The girl's dead. But yeah, so this is the most unrealistic part of the movie for me. There's no way in hell this guy would just be released, even if they determined that certain aspects of Harry's arrest were, yes, highly illegal. They would find a way to fucking hold on to this guy for a while still, right?
Because they're like 3 people.
Not only that, but at this point, Harry would be able to say he's acting on probable cause, right? Because the district attorney, and they bring in some like professor from like Berkeley, some law professor or something, and they're like, yeah, well, it's all because that 14-year-old girl was actually dead when all this happened. They're saying that's why it couldn't have been probable cause, because the girl was dead all this time. But they have that note saying that she's going to be alive until this certain time, so they had every reason to believe she was alive. Mm-hmm. I have trouble accepting this, especially knowing what we know now about the police. And you don't even need legal justification for a lot of stuff they do.
All the police are dirty Harrys.
I'm kind of with Harry on this. I got to be honest. This is some insane BS Scorpio's lawyer has pulled.
Yeah, and I think the audience is with Harry on this as well at this point.
Yeah, but it's a movie. There's the big it's like, well, what about that guy has rights, and then Harry's like, what about those rights of that little girl or something, Yeah, this is a little insane, but Harry vows to basically just follow Scorpio once he's released, basically just waiting for him to fuck up. And he's following him, and he's always like, you see a number of scenes of Scorpio just going around town. He's like hanging out at this playground. He's going to a titty bar. Harry's always there wearing his sunglasses, just watching him. It's great.
He really is like the Terminator.
Then the movie almost slips into the absurd a little bit, where Scorpio goes to like some abandoned warehouse or something, like a basement of some like torn down building, and goes to this guy and pays him to beat him up. It's really weird. But it's kind of amazing, and it's like, I love the implication that there's just people out there that do this.
I know, yeah.
There's like almost something like John Wick about it. I don't know what it is,
but
it's just like this is like secret underground stuff, because he gets beaten up and then claims that Callahan did it. So suddenly there's a whole other legal nightmare, because Harry doesn't deny following the guy. He's like, yeah, I followed him on my spare time, but I didn't do this. And they're like, oh, how do we know that? And he's like, because he looks too good. He's got a point there. He would have finished the job. He would have just killed the guy. So at this point, what can Harry do, really? Like, he's kind of screwed. I guess he's like off the case, or I guess there just isn't a case at this point.
Yeah, and he's not following him around anymore because
the guy's in the hospital. It's hard to follow a guy. But this is the ultimate, like, insane dude move. Like, Scorpio, I mean, this movie, it's obviously, it's Dirty Harry, right? You remember the Dirty Harry character. That's the real memorable part of the movie. This Scorpio killer is amazing. He is such a good villain. He does not get enough credit in the history of film villains, I don't think. But this is the true sign of a crazy person, a dude that's willing to just pay someone to beat him up, to frame someone. Like, killing a 14-year-old girl is one thing. This dude is insane.
Or, stealing a school bus, also insane.
That stuff happens, though. Hijacking school buses, that stuff happens. This paying someone to beat you up and make it look like the police did. I'm not sure people do this.
Well, my favorite...
Just Jesse Smollett is probably the closest comparison I can think of.
What a loser. Well, my favorite part about that scene, if I'm being completely honest, is he gives this big black guy $200.
Also, going back to Jesse Smollett, Scorpio is smart enough to pay cash here.
America, let me just tell you something. What's that? Do not commit crimes with checks. Come on, man. You cannot, if you're going to break the law, do not write a check. Because you're writing a check that what? Behind cash. Yo, man, you cannot cash up. Hey, get cash, man.
But no, he pays this big black guy like $200 in cash, and he goes, I want every penny's worth. And after the guy roughs him up a bit, he goes, man, you're looking pretty bad. Like, are you sure you want me to continue? And Scorpio says, I want every penny's worth. What do you say, you big black
Yeah, he says something
bitch
racist,
or something?
and then so the guy is like got no business. Like, okay, I guess you want this.
Yeah, so he like stomps on his chest. It was great, and yeah, that's the marker of a true crazy person. You're right.
So the next time we see Scorpio, he's stopping at a liquor store and he's buying a bottle of liquor, and he makes some small talk with the liquor store owner, and he's like, hey, aren't you the guy who's been robbed a bunch of times that I've seen on TV? And he's like, oh yeah, that's me. And then he pulls his gun out from behind the counter, and he's like, but I always keep this on. They don't rob me anymore. And then Scorpio just smashes the bottle over his head and takes the gun. I love it. I love that scene. Again, it's kind of like darkly humorous. Like, this guy kind of just fell into this.
Well, exactly.
This liquor store owner.
Well, it's funny because, like, when that happens, you're like, oh, I totally get why he gets robbed all the time. You know what I mean? Like, he's an idiot.
He can get a gun by other means. Does he have to smash a bottle of liquer over this poor guy's head to get one? I don't know.
I assume he can buy a gun in America in 1971. I assume he has money.
Yeah, in San Francisco. It's a little... The early warning system might detect something with with Scorpio here, and the early warning systems for like credit cards and stuff. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Scorpio gets to a school bus, invites himself on board, says something about how I'm the school bus inspector, whatever. Driver's like, hey, you can't be on here, and then he shows her his gun, and he just takes her hostage. And then to distract the kids, he makes them all sing. Which, again, there's something just demented about this kind of thing. He's trying to make the kids not uneasy, but then eventually when they all start getting uncomfortable, then he just starts screaming at them, and it's just, oh, this guy's just a menace. But while he's done all this, he's also left a note for the mayor saying that he's going to have hostages and that he wants money in a plane or whatever. Then eventually he pulls over the school bus, calls the mayor, and says exactly this hostage situation. I think it's 5 kids and the school bus driver. Mm-hmm. The plan is for one person alone to deliver the money to him at this airport, and then the pilots to take them off, and they don't know where they're going until they actually get there. Obviously, it's a classic D.B. Cooper kind of situation. But, of course, the person who ends up taking the money is Harry Callahan, of course. And he even, like, as he's leaving the mayor's office, he just flat out says, like, I'm not playing by this guy's rules anymore, but they still let him go. He said, well, I guess, no, he doesn't even have the money. He refuses to take the money.
Yeah.
And they're expecting him to just stay away, and obviously he doesn't. There's that awesome shot of the school bus going by this bridge, and you just see Harry Callahan standing on top of the bridge. and And then he jumps onto the school bus. This school bus conveniently has, like, bars to grab onto on the top of it. I've never seen a school bus with these. I feel like they're only there for this stunt. You know what I'm talking about? It looks like they have, like, a bike rack or something.
Yeah, like a roof rack for luggage. That's what it looked like.
It's exactly what it looks like. And it's not, like, an insane stunt. It's no like, Mad Max kind of thing. But it's a fun stunt. And you can tell it's actually Eastwood in many of the shots, so it's probably him the entire time, and that's why they have those bars to make it not actually that dangerous, but it's still a satisfying stunt to see a guy jump on top of a school bus and hang on to the school bus as it starts swerving and stuff.
Well, it's a cool stunt because it's a believable stunt, you know? Like,
sure.
It looks doable.
And then, so, Scorpio's trying to shoot him. The bus eventually crashes. All the kids and stuff just run off. The bus crashes near a quarry that Scorpio runs to. And again, he does a really convincing limp run throughout this movie because he's been stabbed in the leg, of course. He's also had that same injured leg stomped on by Harry. So the shootout in this quarry is awesome. There's like all these conveyor belts with rocks going around that Harry at one point like rides around. They're shooting at each other. There's a lot of dust flying around from the bullets hitting all this old wood and stuff. And eventually Scorpio exits the quarry, happens to find a small child fishing at this pond or man-made lake or whatever
next to this
right next to the quarry,
machinery.
who fortunately has not heard all the gunshots, which actually makes sense with how loud the quarry is. That's believable enough to me. Mm-hmm. So he runs up to the kid, grabs him, holds the gun at his head, and turns back to Callahan and goes like, "It's over. Like, I've got this kid. It's all over. You can't do anything to me now." And then Harry kind of pretends, he feigns like he's putting his gun down, but then he just lifts it back up and shoots Scorpio right in the shoulder, which gets him to let go of the kid. The kid runs off, and then we get an echo of the bank robbery scene as Harry goes up to this guy on the dock. They do this "did I fire 6 shots or only 5" thing again as Scorpio is kind of reaching for his own gun. Scorpio eventually tries his luck, reaches for the gun, and gets shot and falls into this lake or pond or whatever. And Harry just kind of looks at what he's done and just takes out his police badge and throws it in the water. He's done. He's not coming back for any sequels.
Never.
And that is the end of Dirty Harry. It's a heroic but also somber ending because it's kind of sad music and he throws the police badge in. But yeah, it's a bit of a downbeat ending, I think, even though it is heroic.
Well, and it would be kind of, it would be
Callahan
cooler if he was on top of like a rooftop in San Fran or something and he shoots him and he falls all the way down. But I'll take this ending.
And you're looking for more collateral damage, that he can fall on top of a small child or something? No, yeah. This is a fine setting. The quarry setting is great for feels like a kind of James Cameron-y, because James Cameron loves his like industrial settings for big action scenes, right?
Yes, he does. And so does what's his name? Twin Peaks. What's his name?
Dana Ashbrook?
No, stop it.
Laura Flynn Boyle?
No, stop it. Director. What's his name?
Mark Frost?
I hate you so much. Anyways, he likes big industrial sets too.
Yeah, but not for action scenes. David Lynch doesn't do
likes
action scenes.
Yeah, well, apparently him and James Cameron would sometimes walk around and look at industrial sets together. What's his name?
Jim, what did you think of... I already said his name is David Lynch.
Oh, thank you.
I said it. I notably didn't say it for a long time, but I did let it slip at one point.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yes, David Lynch. Anyways, continue. Ask me the question.
Jim, what did you think of Dirty Harry?
Well, it's a great movie. It's a classic for a reason. It's described on the box as a neo-noir. I don't know necessarily how true that is. I'm also not even sure what a neo-noir is.
Can I say something about neo-noir? Again, this is a couple episodes ago with Mad Max. We talked about how my interpretation of the word dystopian is apparently different from how most people use it. I'm going to say something kind of similar about neo-noir, and I think this is just really... When I first heard about neo-noir, it was like Blade Runner. Mm-hmm. And maybe a few other kind of sci-fi movies, maybe Soylent Green a little bit. And so I thought neo-noir, because neo sounds like sci-fi. I mean, it just means new, obviously, but I thought neo-noir had to be sci-fi. And really, it's not. It's just modern.
Yes.
And so we could say neo-noir is just noir that's not in black and white, right? But then it's just like, is noir different than just film noir? Is film noir specifically as like a proper noun? Does that have to be black and white, and just like noir, neo-noir doesn't have to be? Because like I've seen John Wick described as neo-noir. I've seen Blue Velvet. Speaking of David Lynch, a lot of David Lynch stuff I feel like is neo-noir-ish.
Well, you know why
Minority Report was definitely one of the sci-fi movies that I had seen described as that.
Well, you know why I think something like John Wick is described as neo-noir? It's because of this movie. Dirty Harry or the Dirty Harry franchise, because Clint Eastwood well, first off, he's such a cool character, and that's what really propels this movie, is Clint Eastwood and his interactions with the world around him. But he is this awesome character to watch, and he's just so, like, grizzled and gruff, and he doesn't take any shit, and he gives too much shit.
Yeah.
You know? And he is, I guess, this noir-ish character. Right, he's kind of
he is. He's a modern noir hero where he's like morally gray. There's a lot in a lot of the classic film noir from the 40s and 50s and stuff. There's a lot more of like a sexual component to those movies that isn't in Dirty Harry, and they couldn't go too into it in some of those old movies because they're old movies, obviously. Mm-hmm. But neo-noir usually, like, there's the femme fatale, obviously, or not neo-noir, but film noir, classic film noir. But the noir hero is just this kind of morally gray. A lot of times he doesn't seem to care that much about whatever case his is. It's more of a thing of duty. And in this case, I guess Harry cares a lot about catching Scorpio Killer, but does he care for the right reasons? Does he actually care about the 14-year-old girl, or does he just really want to kill this guy? Or does he, because he doesn't care about all the rules and regulations that govern policing and law enforcement, obviously, about that. So yeah, he is a hyper violent Sam Spade in some respects, I think.
And again, he's what propels this movie, and I think what makes this movie great. I don't know if this movie would be as good with another actor playing a different type of character. You know what I mean?
I don't know how well you know this, but there were a lot of different actors reportedly either interested or at least considered for this role. I'm going to list some of them. I think all of them are terrible, and maybe it's because we have Eastwood to measure up to, but like I can't imagine these other actors doing justice. But how about Frank Sinatra? Can you picture Frank Sinatra as Dirty Harry?
No, and by 71, absolutely. He's like fat.
Yeah,
old.
And that's the other thing. The age is a factor on most of these guys, because also John Wayne. And John Wayne was like, he had one foot in the tombstone in 71 almost, but like, I don't know. And John Wayne apparently, I think, was the first choice, and I think he turned it down because he felt it was too violent. He didn't like the R-rated aspects of the film, the aspects of the film that Clint Eastwood wouldn't mind, because that's what a lot of his movies were. They were just more modern and more violent John Wayne movies in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And then another one considered was Steve McQueen.
Overrated.
Which I think he would have been better than Wayne or Sinatra, but yeah, he would not have been my first choice. I think Eastwood is perfect. I think you could have gotten some other actors. You could have maybe gotten a Bronson. Bronson's a little older, obviously, or at least looks a lot older than Eastwood, but with the Death Wish movies coming a few years later, you can kind of see a similarity there. Like, yeah, maybe he could have done that, but any actor I don't think is doing a better job than Eastwood. It just, there might be some that would do it pretty well.
Yeah, and going back to the John Wayne thing, it's interesting that John Wayne was thought of for this role when he's like the family man.
John Wayne, well, and that's the thing though, because Eastwood and John Wayne are both politically conservative, because the character of Harry Callahan is politically very conservative. The difference is John Wayne was more social values conservative, I think, and Eastwood's probably more economically conservative, maybe. Like, Eastwood, like, imagine John Wayne in an R-rated movie. Imagine John Wayne saying the F word or peeping on a naked woman. Like, there's a reason we never saw it. Yeah. And it's not just because of his age.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was still making movies in the 70s. He could have made a movie where he's just, fuck this, fuck that, all that stuff. And it's like, no, he don't want to do that. That wasn't who John Wayne was.
I think his character that he played that most closely resembles Dirty Harry would have been Rooster Cogburn, I guess.
Oh, yeah, he does say bitch. Fill your hands, you son of a bitch. That's probably as vulgar as John Wayne ever got.
I know, and I bet he had to go wash his mouth out with soap after he finished filming that scene.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, Dirty Harry, great movie, great acting, cool story, fun action, nothing over the top, but it's serviceable, and it is fun to watch. Yeah, great shots of San Francisco in the 70s, in the early 70s, which was kind of like a magical time that you kind of pointed out earlier. It was the transition out of the hippy-dippy era.
Well, and that's specifically the San Francisco thing. What I find fascinating about 70s urban movies in general is that the 70s was just the most filthy time in America's history, basically, and it's just where there's just porno theaters everywhere. You know, it's the porno chic era. This is right around the time when porno movies were actually becoming mainstream, and it's like, yeah, sure, we'll just have peep shows on every street corner. You know, it's a magical time. It's truly, I'm sure it was. I have such trouble believing that cities were like that. Like, not that long ago.
I know it's weird, right?
And I know they were. I've seen the footage. I've seen Basket Case. I've seen Taxi Driver. I just have, it's just hard to wrap my head around that, though.
Well, while you try to wrap your head around that, how about you tell me how you feel about Dirty Harry? Did you like it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies, really, of all time. I think Eastwood's awesome. I love him as an actor. I think, again, not the most complicated performance. Eastwood has certainly delivered better performances, more nuanced performances in his acting career. But the character is so much fun, and he embodies all of what makes Dirty Harry, what makes Harry Callahan fun to watch, and also there's like a love to hate him aspect to it, too.
Yes, yeah.
Like, I do think, I don't think this movie's necessarily a conservative movie. I think Callahan's definitely a super conservative hero, but I think the movie does ask questions about him. And I do love that, like, with how awesome Scorpio is as a killer, as a villain, it's, like, reasonable for someone to think, yeah, we actually do need Dirty Harrys out there.
Yes.
Because if we have people like Scorpio, how do we deal with that? You know, I think the movie, I don't know if it's an intelligent movie. It's certainly not a dumb movie, but I do think it's like worth asking questions like that. You certainly when you're watching a movie like this, and also just to hit upon the politics of this movie a bit. So this movie is, I think I mentioned it already, but directed by Don Siegel. Don Siegel, one of the two directors that Eastwood credits for why he is such a good director, or like why he went into directing. He's like, I felt like I knew everything I needed to know about directing from working with Don Siegel and Sergio Leone, because they're two of the greatest directors ever, especially Leone. I think Siegel probably a little underrated historically, not really, I mean, not that he should be brought up necessarily with like Kubrick and Scorsese, but man, was a great director. Worked with John Wayne also. I think he did The Shootist, which is John Wayne's last movie, I believe, and one of his better ones, I would say. He also did Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original from the 50s, which is an awesome movie as well. But supposedly, Don Siegel was super politically liberal, and I had read something like his two biggest movies, or his two most memorable movies, were these movies that were seen by so many people to be conservative movies. Dirty Harry and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. With Invasion of the Body Snatchers, how it deals with kind of the Red Scare and stuff like that. So the argument that this person was saying was basically that Don Siegel films were misinterpreted. That may or may not be true. I think, I just think this movie's good at raising some questions. I don't think it's glorifying what Harry Callahan does. I don't think it's necessarily, he's not the villain the way Scorpio is, certainly. But yeah, I don't know. You can read Dirty Harry from either side of the political aisle, I think. And that doesn't necessarily make it worse. I think that almost makes it better in some ways, that there's layers to it.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, what he stands for is left up to the specific audience members watching the movie.
Well, what he stands for, what Callahan stands for is clear. What the movie is saying about that, I think, is up to the audience.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, Callahan is one of the least mysterious film characters I think I can think of. He's very blunt. We know exactly his deal. Even the little things are left mysterious about his wife and stuff. But no, we know who Harry Callahan is, what he stands for. But it's a magical film despite all that. I think I've always said this, action as a genre changed drastically in like the 80s. You know, when you get your James Camerons and, you know, Die Hard and all that stuff, it's a lot more energetic. It's a lot faster paced. I don't know what started that, but I do know you see older action movies, and you're like, oh, this is barely an action movie by today's standards. Like, I think Dirty Harry falls into that. Death Wish does. And I think James Bond from Goldfinger on was pretty modern in its action sensibilities, but I think Dirty Harry is probably my favorite of those like pre-80s, like it's my favorite of like those slow, for lack of a better term, boring action movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's where the action isn't about the speed, the energy. It's more just about the brutality. I don't know if this will make sense, but one shot from Dirty Harry's .44 Magnum feels like 45 shots fired from Arnold's, helicopter gun in Predator or whatever, that gun I'm talking about. It's like kind of like a Gatling gun type thing. I feel like you feel the impact of every single bullet fired in this movie that, you don't always in some of the more action-packed movies out there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to explain it. Yeah, I agree. Well, do you want to talk about a movie that has impacted me in many ways? I'm sure it has impacted you in many ways, but it also ties in...
What's that supposed to mean?
Yes. But it also ties into our sleazy porn of the 70s of America.
Okay, hang on. This is a classy film, Deathstalker 2. I'm not going to hear any of this.
Listen. Deathstalker 2 came out in 1987, but it was written by...
It wasn't the only thing that came out then.
It was written by the infamous Jim Wynorski.
No, it wasn't.
Yes,
it was directed by him. He didn't write it.
You're right. No.
He came up with the story, and he didn't write the screenplay.
Oh, bullshit. Oh, wait. You might be right. Yeah, you're probably right.
I am right.
Listen, it was definitely directed
do your
by
research.
him. Oh,
it was certainly directed. This is a Jim Wynorski film through and through.
Well, okay, listen.
But I will say, even though he didn't write it, he did come up with the story.
Listen, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. It says he helped. He says he wrote it.
Look at IMDb, but I was just going to say, I read that this script was written 100% serious, and then Wynorski's directing it, and he's like, yeah, we're just not going to take this movie seriously, and he made it into a comedy, and I think that's a stroke of genius. I haven't seen a ton of Jim Wynorski movies. I've seen, I'm assuming, more than you. This might be my favorite one of his. Return to Swamp Thing's up there. Not coincidentally, both those films feature Monique Gabrielle and her two talents.
Well, that might be the only two talents that poor woman has.
I will say, she's one of the worst actresses in history, obviously. But I will say, what makes her kind of fun to watch versus like other bad actors is you can see her trying so hard that it makes it funny. The way she moves her mouth and the way she moves her eyebrows, she's trying so hard. She just doesn't have a single talent, and she doesn't have a single gene of talent in that incredibly sexy body of hers, unfortunately.
She just doesn't get it. Whatever it is, she just doesn't get it.
I do think, though, with this movie being a comedy, it's kind of a farce of itself. I think she fits in pretty well, actually, but that's, whatever. Other things fit well in her, too. That's the thing.
Well, see, I was going to say the sleazy porno 70s thing that I was trying to tie into was actually Monique Gabrielle, whose real name is Catherine Gonzalez. I
have read about she goes by Monique Gabrielle Kernan now, I think, or something. And yes. I think she's like runs a porn company or something.
Yes, I believe so. And she also went by a different name. I'm trying to find it, but I can't find it right now. But she was in a couple pornos, but apparently she was not doing any of the acting in the pornos.
I think she was in a couple, like in her prime in the 80s. She was in a couple non-explicit roles, or she was in some like softcore movies, because she's Emmanuelle in Emmanuelle 5, which is the first Emmanuelle film not to feature Sylvia Kristel. I don't know if it's viewed as an official Emmanuelle film. I'm sure they made more after that. But at some point later in her career, I think she did do hardcore stuff, and I think she maybe even directed and produced some of that stuff too. That's the Monique Gabrielle that I don't know. I know the Monique Gabrielle in Bachelor Party, Deathstalker 2,
Emmanuelle 5.
Emmanuelle 5, I've seen that one. I know I've seen her in some other things.
She was in Airplane 2, apparently.
Amazon Women on the Moon is a great role for her. She plays like a Playboy playmate who refuses to put on her clothes, and there's like a little... That's a weird movie. It's not a very good movie, but that's a memorable scene of hers.
Which, by the way, she was on the cover of Penthouse, I think. Oh, yeah, here's her name. Although she was in the 1986 adult film Bad Girls 4, credited as Luana Chass, she did not play an explicit part.
Oh, she's also in, speaking of like, kind of in the vein of Emmanuelle, she's in Lady Chatterley's Lover 2
Yeah, young
or something
Lady
like
Chatterley
that.
too. She plays like a maid that gets banged in the
She
woods.
plays a maid with, I can't remember if it was a terrible or a half-decent Irish accent, but yes, I enjoyed her in that movie.
Well, knowing her, it was probably terrible. But yeah, so this poor woman is perhaps the worst actor that we featured on this podcast. And it's unfortunate that she takes up a huge part of this movie.
No, it's not. She's the best part of them. Well, I will say, she and John Turleski, who plays Deathstalker, for very different reasons, they are the best part of the movie. I mean, Monique Gabrielle, obviously, for the looks, but also her performance is hilarious with how bad it is. And Turleski's performance is also hilarious, but it's not bad per se. It's just funny.
Yeah, well, it's
He's
not
just
bad.
really
it's
funny.
It's just really cheesy, you know?
It's very cheesy, but it worked for me. This is one of my favorite B movies, I think.
You know, yeah, so I was going to say that. This is possibly one of the most B-est B movies we've ever covered on this podcast. This has all the hallmarks of a great B movie.
Recycled footage.
Yeah.
You get the pig mask guy looking at a pig. That I remember that shot in the original Deathstalker.
Yeah, we also have sequel that has nothing to do with the original movie and is totally tonally different from the original movie.
And completely recast the lead.
Yes, yeah, and
I will say, how many sequels have you seen that are basically parodies of the movie that they're a sequel to?
I guess like Airplane would be the only.
But Airplane already was a goofy comedy. I would say Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 fits in this, and maybe one or two others, but I'll tell you what, I enjoyed this movie a lot more than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Well, this movie, I want to point out, because it really is the antithesis to the first Deathstalker movie.
I know, it's entertaining.
Okay, how dare you? The first Deathstalker was a true sword and sorcery with like lots of tits. Or a fair amount of tits and lots of rape.
And rape. It was all rape. It was see, that's the thing. It's like the tits don't count if it's rape.
Oh, okay.
No, they don't, because they're not titillating at that point. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, I got you. So yes, I agree. But there were lots of tits in the first movie.
There were.
And it was a direct, not rip-off, but it was totally ripping off Conan the Barbarian.
It was Conan, and it was, I didn't notice this until we actually covered Conan for the podcast, because I didn't know the movie too well. But it was a beat-for-beat rip-off of that story, almost.
Yes. The first one had decent action and, like, sword stuff. The villain... if you asked me to tell you what the story was about, I probably couldn't. But I just remember...
We saw Conan not that long ago. He had to save a princess who was being held captive by, like, an evil guy.
Yeah, an evil sorcerer guy.
Yeah.
He came back for the adventure. He came back for the romance. But most of all, he came back for the money.
You mean you would have helped me without the money?
I didn't say that.
Deathstalker 2, Duel of the Titans.
Where's Deathstalker?
Somebody looking for me.
Stalker! You came back!
By popular demand.
Yeah, so Deathstalker 2, it's totally different right off the bat. In the first 2 minutes, we're introduced to, as you've already pointed out, the different actor who's playing the role of Deathstalker in a totally comedic way.
John Turleski, star of Chopping Mall. He is hilarious here. Is he like chewing gum throughout the movie?
That's
it almost feels like he is. Yeah, because he's always got that like mouth like kind of open. And he's always smirking, and he's doing this thing with like eyebrows. It's like a John Belushi performance. It's hilarious.
Yeah, now he does good performance with eyebrows. Whereas Monique Gabrielle does a terrible performance with eyebrows.
Eyebrows are up and down the entire every time
side.
She needs to emphasize a word, the eyebrows just shoot up. She's awful.
It's a shame this podcast is audio only because like people need to see this movie if they haven't seen it.
Yeah, and also because Monique Gabrielle, it's a dual role, so it's a difficult role, if you will, because she's playing two completely different characters. But only one of those two characters has bangs.
Yeah.
And every Monique Gabrielle character should have bangs because it hides the eyebrows, but even the one that has bangs doesn't hide it enough. She needs like a hat or something. I don't know.
But I feel like she's better at acting angry than she is whatever else with Deathstalker. Okay. So anyways, we're introduced to this character Deathstalker. He's stealing like a gem from a woman.
Very Indiana Jones on a budget.
Yeah.
There's also a sequence that was very much, I don't remember which Indiana Jones movie this is in, but there's this scene where he turns the corner and he's off camera for a bit, and then he comes running back out and he's being chased by like 4 people. There's an Indiana Jones shot like that where it's like a joke like that.
Yeah, and that's the vibe of this entire movie, but worse. And
worse. No, I mean, listen, it's worse than Indiana Jones, sure. It's funnier than Indiana Jones. This movie's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean...
And most of it's intentional. Most of it, not all of it.
I will say, I watched this movie twice, and I was at work both times when I had to watch it, and I was in stitches in the staff break room watching this movie.
Just like Dirty Harry getting that bullet pulled out of him. You're cutting off your pants.
Exactly, yeah. How'd you know what
I was
doing?
cutting off my pants watching this movie, watching the Monique Gabrielle scenes.
Well, yeah. Well, speaking of Monique Gabrielle, we're introduced to her very shortly after we're introduced to Deathstalker, where she's being thrown out of a bar. She's being thrown out for like an unknown reason, I think. And she just...
No, it's revealed. Because she's the seer, and she revealed that this king or prince or whatever, that his wife was going to have a baby, was that she was pregnant, but she also revealed that the baby was not his.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah. Yeah, she gets tossed out. She's getting beaten up by these goons, and she's like, "Well, you wouldn't hit a princess, would you?" And they're like, "Princess? Like, go fuck yourself. You're not a princess." So they start beating the shit out of her, and then Deathstalker shows up, and
he just shows up. He just appears. He's like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, and he's always got this stupid fucking look on his face, where he's like, "Hello, is this a woman in need?"
Yeah, John Terlesky is not taking this movie seriously. And I'm going to say, I think that's exactly how Wynorski wanted him to act. I think he...
Oh, probably.
He fits the tone of the movie perfectly.
Yes, yeah. Deathstalker, from this point onwards known as Stalker. Not creepy at all.
Yeah, that was annoying. The first... Because, yeah, his name's Deathstalker. You'd think like a movie called Deathstalker, like, oh, that's a nickname or something. No, in the first movie, that's his real name. But it feels weird to break it up and say that like Death is his first name and Stalker is his last name. And it's so weird to hear people refer to him as Stalker. And it's even weirder because most of the time it's Monique Gabrielle saying it, and it's just terrible.
Stalker, come back. Stalker.
But there is a fun moment when they're riding on horseback when they're getting away from some goons.
Deathstalker? Uh-huh. Is that your first name or your last name?
Like, I do like that moment because it just draws attention to just how stupid it is.
Okay, well, that scene has one of my favorite lines in this whole movie, but just to quickly get there, Deathstalker goes into this bar, and what's the Oracle's name? Is it Rena? Rena the Seer?
Rena.
They go in, Deathstalker's hanging out. There's lots of topless chicks dancing and doing whatever in this bar. And she's got these huge jugs, and she's ducking and dodging cups and swords and stuff like that. You know, obviously it's titillating.
She's not dodging all the cups. Some are right on her.
I got passed out. I just lost all the breath in my body. Yeah. Well, a big old bar brawl starts, and Deathstalker and Rena escape on horseback. And yeah, as you were saying, they're outrunning all these goons. And that's when she says, "Yeah, what's your name, Deathstalker?" But one of my favorite lines in the movie comes from this scene where
yeah,
Deathstalker goes, "I think we've outrun them. You got to wake up pretty early in the morning to catch me." And Rena goes, "It is early in the morning."
Yeah.
And then like an arrow
that's right when they're coming back.
Field. It's great.
And it's hilarious because it's such a stupid line and it's delivered so stupidly.
Yes.
Like, it is funny, but it's even funnier because it's delivered so horribly by Monique Gabrielle.
Well, they continue to outrun all these bad guys, and they decide to hide in a hut. And Rena, the seer, tells Deathstalker that she's a seer, and she can tell him his future. So she says, "Oh, I see you making a long and perilous journey to the land of Jafir to fight an evil sorcerer named Jarak. And you're gonna
to save a princess."
That's exactly it. "And you're gonna become even more famous than Conan." And he's like, "Really? More famous than Conan?"
This scene was weird because
she says Conan.
Well, no, I'm fine with that. Because she says, "You're going to save a princess." And it's like, that first scene we saw her in, she mentions that she's a princess. And it's like, okay, is she lying? And then I think she mentions it even to Deathstalker at one point. But it's like he's not drawing the connection that maybe she's talking about her. And then it's also weird that when she says what's his name? Jarek?
Jarek, yeah.
Jarek. When she first says that name, that's one of the funniest acting moments, when she, like, so much effort just to say that name, and her eyebrows just shoot out of her head almost. It's hilarious.
Jarek.
Amazing acting.
But yeah, so, I mean, by the end of this movie, obviously, you realize that this future that she was prophesizing was her own future, and she is the princess that's going to be saved. But Deathstalker doesn't know that at the moment. So Deathstalker, who's pretty excited about being more famous.
Oh, there's also a funny gag about how she makes soup for him.
Oh, yes.
And it's terrible. And then so he just, like, pours it out when she's not looking. And then she's like, oh, you must have been really hungry. Do you want any more? And he's like,
no, I'm stuffed.
Nope, couldn't have any more. I'm all full. And then I love when they're leaving the tent. She's like, wait, but there's still soup. Or
yeah, he goes, no, we got to go right now.
Yeah, it's just, it's so stupid. It's great.
So yeah, they immediately depart on this journey because Deathstalker wants to be famous and get all kinds of loot for completing this quest or whatever. As they leave, we cut to, what's his name again? I already said it.
Jarek.
He's got a perfect clone of Rena, who is named Evie. And she's scantily clad, for obvious reasons.
First time we see her, she's wearing an outfit that... Who was the woman that got killed
That's
in real
what I was
life
gonna say,
in the
yeah.
first Deathstalker? Yeah, she's the same outfit. She looks amazing. She looks... Monique Gabriel with that, like, done-up 80s hair, kind of curly hair, amazing look.
Totally.
Looks better than the bangs, even.
Totally gorgeous woman, but they shit all over her in this movie. Like, there's a line nearer...
Hey, some people like that.
But there's a line nearer to the end when, like, these pig guards bring a guy into...
Oh, that is hilarious. That's one of the best jokes.
Yeah, and they walk away, and what does he say? He goes...
Like,
hey,
did you see her face? And then the other pig's like, yeah, great body, though. And it's like, yeah, because they want someone with a pig face. Like, that's hilarious.
I think, like...
They're not saying she's ugly. They're saying she's amazingly hot, but she doesn't have a pig face. Yeah. It's hilarious. I love that line. I love that.
What a clever movie.
Yeah, so Jarek, he made this clone, but he's still trying to test out some kinks, if you know what I mean. But I think...
yeah, with the clone.
This clone cannot live independently of Rena. If Rena were to die, this clone would also die, and this Jarek, I guess, doesn't have a claim to the throne. I don't really know what Jarek's deal is. I guess he's kind of taken over the kingdom. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, all we know is he's like a sorcerer who's created a clone, and with the help of the clone, he's taken over this kingdom. And then we are reintroduced to Sultana, who I'm pretty sure is the woman from the very beginning of the movie, right?
Yeah, she is.
She is an underling of the guy's name I keep forgetting.
Is she an underling? I think she's kind of
she's like the top underling of him, right? Because he's like ordering her around and stuff, and he orders her to check in on a on a one-eyed man named One-Eyed Chin, who is a underling of Jarek, who he's
also, so at this point, Rena and Deathstalker are hanging out together. They're on their little adventure. Jarek wants Rena. He doesn't necessarily want her dead at this point, but he wants to capture her so there can't be any tomfoolery to overthrow the clone version of her. Mm-hmm. He's also working on a way to let the clone live independently. And then Sultana wants Deathstalker dead because Deathstalker, I guess, stole something from her.
Stole this jewel at the beginning of the movie.
But yeah, she gets one of the funniest lines in the movie too. If you didn't know what kind of movie we're watching in that first scene when there's this kind of goofy action, she sees him jump out the window and she's like, I will have my revenge, and Deathstalker 2, and then it cuts to credits and it's like, oh my god, they just did a title drop of a sequel in the movie. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, it was amazingly terrible or terribly amazing.
Well, again, this movie is a parody of Deathstalker. It's amazing. Why would you do this? But also, I'm glad you did it because I didn't really like the first Deathstalker, and I love this movie.
Yeah, this movie's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and I love so Roger Corman, he produced the first Deathstalker movie. He was apparently, according to Jim Wynorski, Corman thought he was going to make Conan, but then he didn't, and someone else made Conan. He was like very upset about that, and he's like, well, fine, I'll just rip it off, and they did Deathstalker. And then by Deathstalker 2, it's a few years later, Roger Corman must have just been like, let's just have some fun with this one, guys. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, I think Deathstalker, they were trying to ape off of Conan's money and box office fame, and At this point, 1987, people don't care that much about Conan, so let's just do whatever. We were contractually obligated to make this movie, maybe, I don't know, but let's just have fun with it.
One of my favorite visual gags is when Sultan is talking to One-Eyed Chin, and this guy, One-Eyed Chin, has put together a team to take out Deathstalker. And you see like all these guys who are all bellied up to the bar.
It's super weird too how he introduces them, and he's like referencing like historical figures.
Yeah. He's like,
the timeline doesn't work for any of them because there's like Ivan the Terrible and Genghis Khan, and it's like, what? These guys didn't live in the same century, and it's just really weird stuff. But again, this is a movie that already referenced Conan as if he was real, so who cares, right? We're just having fun with it.
So he's like introducing all these bad guys, all these big, tough, tall, burly bad guys, and then the worst of them all, the camera pan.
The guy who was let go by Ivan the Terrible because
for being
he was
brutal.
too cruel.
Yeah. Yeah. The camera pans, there's nobody there, and then it pans down and it's a midget. And you're like, okay, classic. But my favorite part of this scene too is there's an immediate cut to them firing explosive arrows at Deathstalker and Rena.
It was like immediate. I was like, oh, I thought this was gonna like come back like 20 minutes from now or something, but no, just all of a sudden they're there. And God bless, they filmed this movie in Argentina, or at least most of it, wherever the hell they filmed. I don't know if they got permission to just blow up the location, but oh my God, there's just explosions
left
it's
and
amazing.
Right and center. Yeah. They're all over the place, and they're big explosions too.
Yeah, it's so dumb, and it's like it does look like they're kind of just filming it like a quarry, kind of like in Dirty Harry, or like almost like a landfill. Like when you see construction along the side of a freeway, and you just see these like big dirt mounds. It looks kind of like they're filming at one of those places, but still, just there's explosions left and right. This isn't a set. This is like out there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, then the scene gets even better because all these baddies firing bomb arrows at Rena and Deathstalker have them like pinned behind a hill. So Deathstalker's like, don't worry, I got this. And he pulls out like a knife out of his pocket, and then he pulls out like a handful of ninja stars. And he sneaks up behind a guy, slits this guy's throat, and then he sees the midget standing on a rise, and he whips a ninja
he gets
star.
the little person with the ninja star, which makes him explode, which is an exploding ninja star. That was news to me.
I know, it's like the greatest thing on the planet. It's so much fun to watch. I replayed it several times at work for a bunch of coworkers who were watching me watch this movie.
What the hell job do you have?
The best kind. Deathstalker goes around and kind of kills everybody off one by one until One-Eyed Chin is left. Chin walks to this misty pool of water to contact Jarek, and he's like, oh, don't worry, Jarek, we didn't kill him, but I'm gonna kill him, and I'm gonna try so hard, even if it kills me, I'm gonna kill him. And Jarek goes, great, I'm sure. And he stabs a sword through his misty pool. It comes out of One-Eyed Chin's misty pool and kills him. Also, by this point, we should mention that Rena's kind of in love with Deathstalker. She's made various advances on him, and he's just kind of not reciprocating those feelings.
We do get a classic later on. Is that a knife in your...
Yeah, is that a sword in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? And then Deathstalker just falls asleep. Well, their next little adventure, they stumble upon a graveyard, I guess. And, and like a mausoleum.
Why were there zombies in this movie?
I have no clue.
That feels like it's a leftover set from another Roger Corman movie.
I know, and they're like, we're running 15 minutes short of time. Should we film something?
They already
really
had the
quickly?
zombie makeup made for some other movie, and it's like, here, throw them in this movie.
The whole point of this scene is Deathstalker wants to steal loot from graves, so he goes into a mausoleum and gets trapped in there by Jarek, who has him in a trap where like the walls start closing in, like a very, classic kind of trap situation, and spikes come out of the walls.
Saw 5, I think, has a death like this with the moving walls.
Wow, Saw 5, what a fucking
Maybe
ripoff.
Saw 6, I don't remember. It's one of the Saw movies. They're all the same.
Deathstalker starts climbing out of this mausoleum with the help of the spikes.
Yeah, the spikes are conveniently long enough to give him, to let him easily
give him
get footing
15
on
minutes
them.
to climb out of this pit. Outside, Rena is terrified and not doing anything because a horde of zombies have crawled out of their graves and have approached Rena, I guess.
You say not doing anything, and ultimately I agree, but this is also the first time we've seen Rena be somewhat competent because she was able to light a torch.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay,
that's a
nice,
step in the right direction for this character, even if she just freezes in fear as the zombies approach her, because she was utterly useless in the flaming arrows scene.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, arguably utterly useless here, but you're right, Torch. So there's
And she does a
redeeming
few
moments.
things late in the movie where, okay, she kind of, I don't want to say she grows as a character through any means other than breast augmentation, but she's not completely useless the entire way through. So it's good. Is it a great character? No. It's a fun character. It's a terrible performance. And she gets some good moments later on.
Well, we get to cut to her again playing evil Princess Evie, because while they're fighting zombies, we see that Evie's having problems where she's like disappearing or something.
Yeah, she's got
right?
it's like Back to the Future when Marty's parents don't kiss and his hand starts to disappear while he's playing guitar to Earth Angel. She's starting to fade out of existence until she eats a human being.
Yeah.
And that's where we get the pig
Did
the
you see
pig
her face?
joke.
Yeah, too bad, nice body though. Yeah, so that's interesting. She's like a vampire queen.
Yeah.
I guess the next plot point, and all of these plot points, by the way, just come rapid fire. Like, you don't even have time to adjust to the new setting. Things just get hurled at you and the screen.
Yeah, the zombie scene in particular, kind of out of nowhere, just really felt out of place. But that is Jarek's first interaction with Deathstalker.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I finally meet you.
Jarek, by the way, played by John Lazar. I guess he was a Shakespearean actor. I really only know him from one other movie. He's in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is another movie. You know what? Come to think of it, that is a movie, a sequel, that is a parody of the original. That may be the best example, actually. But I did read on Wikipedia that he was a skilled martial artist and fencer. Oh. And I'm going to say, in his big sword fight with Deathstalker, that comes through. That's a good fight.
Yeah, except like Deathstalker himself.
No except. Oh, okay. It's all good. No,
Okay.
That's awesome. John Terlesky's good. He's good in the action stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He's fine. He's fine. He's acceptable.
He's
in the
serviceable.
action stuff.
That's my new favorite word, serviceable, because that's what this is. Next, they run into like a band of Amazonian warrior ladies, and they capture them, and they accuse Rena of being the evil Princess Evie, who's like raiding their villages and whatever.
Mm-hmm. But
they also know who Deathstalker is, so they're going to release Rena, but not Deathstalker, because he has to go to trial for his crimes of womanizing.
No, not crimes of womanizing, crimes against women. I.e. all the rape that happened in the first movie, I think.
No, I think they said womanizer. They said you're a womanizer. You're going to be taken to trial because of it.
I don't know. But anyways, I think this is...
to atone for the first movie?
Well, no. But, I mean, yes. But I think this is a great reimagining of the Circe episode from James Joyce's Ulysses, where Leopold Bloom is put on trial by all these women that he's wronged over the years. This is a great stuff. It's the trial by combat. Where he ends up fighting a
like
professional
Kirk
wrestler.
And Spock. Yeah, well, he fights this gorilla of a woman named Gargo or something like that.
Gorgo, yeah.
She's huge.
Named after the British Godzilla ripoff.
This wrestling scene goes on for far too long.
It goes on for way too long. It is very funny at first because it's a literal boxing ring, and they have like a break between rounds where he goes to his corner and Rena's trying to like hype him up, and it's like, okay, this is pretty funny, but it does go on for too long. There's some fun stuff in there, but yeah, it's just too long.
Well,
really,
but then there's like some cool stuff too. So like I feel like it's not, what's his name, John Terlesky. There's a scene where he is like laying on his back and then he just flips up without using his hands. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Which is pretty cool. I doubt he did it. And if he did, then congrats to him. That's awesome. So like there's some neat little stuff, but this scene just goes on way too long. For some reason, he's declared the winner at the end, even though he's had the shit kicked out of him for 14 out of 15 rounds.
Well, he defeats Gorgo, and all the women are all the Amazonians are trying to get him to kill her. But he's like, no, if you want her dead, so like...
yeah, kill her yourself.
I know there's a fight to the death, but you can kill her yourself. I'm not going to kill her. So Deathstalker has grown as a character since the first film. Because the first movie, that whoever that Deathstalker was, he would have just killed this woman. No problem. He was just an asshole. This Deathstalker, a little bit more to him than this. But he's also mad at this point at Rena because now he realizes that Rena is a princess or something.
Yeah, and that she's lied to him the whole time.
And that she's not actually a seer, except she is a seer, just not a good one.
Yeah. Because Deathstalker's mad with her, they kind of part ways. Rena just kind of goes off on her own, and Deathstalker hangs out with the Amazonians until he realizes that the Amazonian queen is trying to marry him, and then he runs away. Like, he literally just runs.
Well, Rena goes off on her own specifically when she sees Deathstalker making out with the Amazonian queen.
Yes, yeah. While all this is going on, we see that Jarek has made a potion that allows the original person to be killed, and while you still keep the clone alive. And him and Evie test it out, and it works. They kill, like, this one poor dude, and the other one survives.
I assume those are good. They just had twins, right? That's probably what that was. I love it.
Then we cut back to Rena and Deathstalker, and Rena's out on her own. She gets captured by the bad guys and Sultana, and she gets dangled over a pot of boiling water in, like, a cave or something. And Deathstalker, who's by this point run away from the Amazonians, he just shows up where Rena is, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here, don't you worry.
You came back!" Yeah, he just kind of shows up. There's nothing, like, clever about it. He's just there.
Yeah,
which
is...
I kind of like that, actually, but it's stupid. It's very stupid.
He fights all the baddies, kills them, and he kills Sultana. And at some point, the rope holding Rena over the pot of boiling water is on fire, and he kills Sultana as the rope breaks, and he dives over the pot and rescues Rena. And there's a terrible line. I wrote it down.
I don't know if it's the worst line of the movie. It's the worst line delivery of the movie.
Yeah, where they're both laying there, and it looks like they're going to lean in for a kiss. Yeah, but Deathstalker kind of pulls back, and Rena's like, "Why?" And what does he say? He says something along the lines of like, "Oh, well, I feel like it wasn't the right time." And Rena goes, "Well, the top half thinks there's a right time, but the bottom half knows it's in the right place." And then they laugh.
Yeah. Well, I do love because it cuts like right after they start to laugh, and I feel like the laugh wasn't scripted. That laugh feels like the two actors realize how dumb that line was.
Yes, I agree.
John Terlesky is certainly in on the joke. At least in this moment, Monique Gabrielle seems like she's in on the joke as well. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, it adds to the magic of this movie. Well, if you thought that was fun, we then cut to a seizure-inducing scene where Jarek revives Sultana, and then they start to bang, and Evie sees them and storms off.
Oh, this reminds me of something. My favorite bit of IMDb trivia for Deathstalker II. So Toni Naples is the name of the actress that plays Sultana. I've never heard of her. I saw something on IMDb that said this is her first starring role, and then for all I know, it was her last one, too. I mean, I don't know. I saw a picture of her, and it's like, it wouldn't shock me to learn that she went into porn, because she just, like, as an older woman, had, like, that look like she had maybe done that, but, who knows. But the IMDb fact, 2 out of 2 found this interesting. Jim Wynorski tried to convince Toni Naples to film scenes topless, but she said no. When producer Roger Corman saw the dailies, he asked why there wasn't any nudity. God bless that man. So Wynorski hired a body double to stand in for Naples and shot her topless. That's this scene we're talking about here. Naples said later she wished she had done the nudity herself because the double's breasts didn't look as good as her own. In fact, they were very unflattering. She then filmed her own nude scenes in future films.
Oh my god.
First of all, if those are unflattering, I'm going to say Toni Naples has great breasts. The doubles are not bad. They're not Monique Gabrielle's, but they're good. Also, another thing from IMDb, this is a quote from Jim Wynorski. Let me pull it up. And it's not in regards to this movie specifically. It's more, I guess you could say, in regards to all of his movies. But Jim Wynorski quotes, "Breasts are the cheapest special effect in our business." Is he wrong?
No, he's totally right. He's totally right. The man, the myth, the legend, Jim Wynorski. Well, breasts aside, we get Rena and Deathstalker. They start sneaking into Jarek's castle, or Rena's old castle, but they get immediately separated. Deathstalker gets captured by Jarek and Sultana, and it looks like Rena's about to
Sultana, who's back from the dead.
Yes, that's right. She's been revived. Rena is almost raped by a bunch of guards, and then all the Amazonians show up and kill the guards.
Mm-hmm.
Deathstalker is brought into Evie's chamber, where we get a very long, drawn-out sex scene. Which
I thought it wasn't long enough, but okay. Listen, Monique Gabrielle is amazing. There's no overstating that.
She's...
I love this woman. She is for me, it's her and Elizabeth Caton from Slave Girls Beyond Infinity, also a terrible actress, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. These women are incredible. They're my favorite B-movie actresses. No offense to Linnea Quigley, but Monique Gabrielle is something else.
Yeah, so they have sex and stuff, and
she's about to eat Deathstalker.
Exactly.
When
but
the other Monique Gabrielle comes in and smacks her over the head. What's the name of the clone?
Evie.
For some reason, they don't kill Evie here. They should have just killed Evie. I don't know why they do.
Yeah, they just knock her out and walk away, and Rena's like, come on, follow me. I'm going to show you a surprise. And she leads Deathstalker through a door to a courtyard where they're, again, immediately surrounded by bad guys. And, again, just as it looks like they're going to be killed, all the Amazonians show up and start killing all the bad guys, and we get this huge battle scene in this castle with lots of extras, surprisingly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this reminded me of, like, Army of Darkness, where it's like, it's on a budget, but they're still pulling off, like, a big, epic, like, medieval battle fairly well. You know, it's not Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but I mean, like, people are flipping in the air,
good.
People are getting stabbed, you know, people are getting hit with arrows. Yeah, it's all kind of exciting stuff.
Yeah, and there's the great bit. This is like a classic, like, silent movie gag where Rena picks up this, like, long pole and she's walking with it behind her neck, and then she hits, like, two people in the back of the head, and then she, like, turns and hits them again. Like, that's a famous gag. I don't know if it's from, like, silent movies or it's like I don't know if it's Laurel and Hardy. It's like some classic gag.
Yeah,
it's neat to see that done in, like, a tongue-in-cheek way in, like, a modern, you know, modern in quotes 1987 movie.
Yeah, no, it's, well, I mean, the movie's ridiculous, so this fits right in. Sultana leaves Jarak in the middle of the battle. She's like, I'm out, I'm done. And she just walks away. And then Evie comes out and was like, what's going on with all this goddamn noise? And Jarak goes, let me escort you back inside. As those two are walking inside, Rena and Deathstalker follow them.
Another great gag, this is like a Scooby-Doo gag, where Rena splits off to go kill Evie. And then she does this, there's this long shot of her going in and out of
like walls. Passageways.
It's like the Scooby-Doo shot, but they're not doors. But she did say that she
grew up in the castle.
She knows all the secret passageways. And it's just like a funny shot.
It is, yeah. And then what's surprising is that when Rena does find Evie, she kills her very quickly.
Yeah, I wanted something more. You know what it is, though? They can't go full cat fight because it's Monique Gabrielle. You can't fake that with a double is really what it was. Because earlier when she knocks out Evie, we never see her in the same shot as Deathstalker. It's Deathstalker with a naked Monique Gabrielle on top of him, and then it's a clothed Monique Gabrielle just standing near the bed talking. So they don't do anything. They don't try to do anything that would be difficult with the doubles, I guess.
I get it. But you're right. With that scene, you do want something more instead of just Rena throwing
just
a
knife throw.
Yeah, into Evie's gut and killing her. But there's a cool effect where she kind of like smokes away.
Yeah, that's neat.
Deathstalker is fighting Jarak in this cool sword fight. It's, nothing too fancy, but there's like lots of footwork going on. It's almost like a stage play.
I was going to say that. Yes, this is I think it's a very good fight scene. It's well choreographed. It reminds me a lot of, I've seen a ton of Shakespeare plays on stage, and because Shakespeare plays, there's like sword fights in like all the big history ones or the tragedies, right? Hamlet and Laertes, Hotspur and Prince Hal. When you see those on stage, the focus clearly isn't on the sword fight, when they were because the lines are more, it's Shakespeare. The lines are more important. This feels like the best version of like a Broadway or off-Broadway Shakespeare like sword fight. Like there were even ways that they were holding swords that really reminded me of like I've seen that on stage a lot, and I don't know if was actually done in the Middle Ages with fighting with swords, but it all is pretty good. And then it gets pretty creative at the end. It goes beyond something that you would see on stage.
Yeah, I mean, like they're jumping around, and I think Deathstalker loses his sword and starts fighting Jarak with a candelabra or something.
Yeah, the big candlestick thing.
And yeah, and that's all pretty cool. But the coolest part of this whole scene is Jarek's about to kill Deathstalker, and then Deathstalker just like grabs his sword and then fucking punches it and breaks it in half. Like a cool karate move.
Yeah.
And then he steals the broken hilt of the sword out of Jarek's hands and just stabs him in the throat with it. It's so cool.
It's amazing. It is genuinely awesome. It's dumb to see someone just punch a sword in half, but it's awesome.
It looks so cool.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
It's a good effect on the neck, on the throat.
Yeah. Then the movie just kind of cuts to Rena being reinstated, or like reinstated at her re-coronation as princess or queen or whatever.
Which princesses don't get coronated
Yes.
usually. So who is the queen and or king of this kingdom? We don't know.
No, we don't, and we will never know.
We couldn't afford them.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it wasn't in the budget. But Rena calls up Deathstalker to give him his reward for helping her, and she goes, "It's me!" And Deathstalker's like, "Are you sure that you want me?" She goes, "Of course." And then they kiss and presumably get married, and that's the end.
Monique Gabrielle is the greatest reward any man could possibly hope for.
She's pretty cool. Like, she's not a great actress, but she's pretty dope.
No, she's terrible. She is one of the worst actresses, maybe the worst I've ever seen, but I don't care.
Like, I would love to meet her in real life just to say thank you for this movie.
I would love to say thank you for this movie, for Evil Toons, for Return of Swamp Thing, for maybe her porno career. I don't know. For Emmanuel 5 for sure. Listen, I love Monique Gabrielle so much that I've seen a version of Emmanuel 5 that was just like some awful bootleg that didn't even have English subtitles, and I'm not even sure if the movie was originally in French like the original Emmanuels were. I watched that entire movie even though I didn't understand a word anyone said, so
Dude,
that's how awesome
she's in
she is.
Silk 2.
Yeah.
She's in a movie called Amazon Women on the Moon.
I mentioned that
Penthouse
movie
Video.
earlier.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's directed by John Landis.
Oh.
All the movies she's made, that might be her most like real movie of all of them.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, interesting. Do these sound like softcore porn television shows? I'm going to read you the titles. Ready? Hunter.
I mean, that could be anything.
Something is out there, and she's in an episode called Good... What does it say? Good Psychics Are Hard to Come By.
Okay, Something Is Out There sounds like a horror movie. That doesn't sound like softcore porn to me, but...
What about this one? Hardball.
That could be a gritty cop drama for all I know. I mean, that could be anything.
Yeah.
You're not selling me on these titles.
The episode
so
name
far.
is A Killer Date. The next television show...
Again, that could just be a cop drama, though.
Here's one called...
These are all TV?
Yes. Here's one called Dream On.
That was an HBO show. That was a legitimate show. That was on HBO.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but I know it's like... It had like 6 seasons. That's a real show.
She's in an episode called 555 Hell. And then, okay, now these ones... Okay, listen.
That sounds like just a ripoff of 867 Evil, which, by the way, she is in 867 Evil 2, which I have not seen. I've seen the original... Is it 867? No, it's probably an 867
Is it 666?
Because I'm thinking of 867-5309. It's Robert Englund directed that movie. I'm trying to think of what it's called. But yeah, it's something, but Eve, it's like a phone number, and Evil is the last 4 digits.
Oh. Well, tell me your vibe on these last two. Here's the television show. USA Up All Night. Her role was...
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
USA Up All Night, I'm familiar with what that is. USA Up All Night is relevant to this podcast. That was an old show, kind of like a Joe Bob Briggs show that used to air movies, and it had some movies originally made for it, including Vice Academy.
Oh.
I believe all 6 Vice Academy movies were USA Up All Night features. So that was hosted by some, I don't remember her name, but some like model from the time. And they had guests like Linnea Quigley and Monique Gabrielle and people like that come on and talk about movies and stuff. They probably did like Return of Swamp Thing on there, So that's like a real thing. I know what that is.
Okay. Well, she played the roles of schoolgirl Monique and Monique Slumber Party guest. But here's the last one. Problem Child 3, Junior in Love, and she played the blonde.
I've heard of Problem Child. I want to say that's just like a horror movie. I don't know about Problem Child 3, but here's something else. I thought this was hilarious. IMDb trivia for Jim Wynorski. This seems like, why is this listed as like a fact? Because this isn't verifiable, but it says the most difficult actors he has worked with are Robert Culp, who was a Columbo guest star, one of the best Columbo guest stars, arguably the best. Jennifer Rubin, who played Taryn in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which we just saw, and Tanya Roberts, who I know you are aware of. She's a Bond girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's gotten along with 95% of his stars otherwise. What?
What kind of fucking fact is that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a fact. Shut up,
Did Jim Wynorski write that fact himself for the trivia?
That'd be so funny if
weird,
he did. Yeah.
But I got excited because I'm like, oh, all three actors he didn't get along with, I'm very familiar with. Robert Culp, Jennifer Rubin, we just saw her last week. Jim Wynorski's still making movies.
The last movie he made was Cobra Gator, 2018.
No, that's not true.
Oh, okay.
That is not true. He made Attack of the 50-Foot Cam Girl just like a year ago.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I think he even directed the sequel to that. But yeah, so I've seen some recent Jim Wynorski movies, believe it or not.
Well, Patrick, how did you like Deathstalker 2?
I like it so much, and it's not just Monique Gabriel. She's obviously my favorite part. It's such a fun movie. It's so dumb, but it knows it's dumb. That John Turleski performance where he's just completely tongue-in-cheek on everything, I just think that's a more fun... Maybe because I don't really like fantasy that much. I like a stupid, self-aware sword and sorcery movie more than like an actual serious sword and sorcery movie. Like, I like this movie more than Conan. I can't explain it. I just do. And... it's a classic B movie. It's hilarious. It's largely intentionally funny. There's some bits that are unintentionally funny, i.e. Monique Gabriel's acting, although some of that I think is intentional. Some of her lines.
Oh,
and some of the lines that are some of them that are genuinely bad jokes are made funny because of how terribly they're delivered, i.e. the top half, bottom half line. And then the John Lazar sword fight is actually well done. Like, there's enough that's like kind of exciting as far as action stuff goes, but mostly just, to me, this is a comedy, and it's a pretty damn funny one. I like it. This is the best Deathstalker movie. This is the best Deathstalker actor. Yeah, I think it's a different actor in all four films. The guy in the first Deathstalker sucked. The worst Deathstalker actor is in the third one, which is also the worst Deathstalker movie. The guy who plays Deathstalker in that is literally the most boring person I've ever seen in a motion picture. Yeah, there's nothing major about any of the Deathstalker movies, I suppose. But
Christ.
John Turleski is really funny in this movie. He's really likable. He's got that like Harrison Ford, like Han Solo charm.
He's got boyish charm.
But in like a goofier way.
Yeah.
Jim, what about you?
Yeah, like this is a movie that if you have a friend who wants to get into B movies, I would suggest showing them a movie like this, if not this movie,
Yeah.
It's palatable, like you kind of understand what's going on, but it's lacking enough sense, or like it's lacking, what am I trying to say? Like it's lacking just enough to not entirely make sense, right? And you get everything that you want out of a classic B movie. Bad acting, funny acting, genuine comedy and jokes, nudity.
Amazing gratuitous nudity.
Yeah.
Amazing nudity, too.
Explosions, Yeah, it's a really fun movie to watch, and I was...
Dumb jokes about pig-headed people not thinking one of the most attractive women who's ever lived is attractive because she doesn't have a pig face.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic movie. Even though I was kind of shitting on it, it's a really fun watch. It's one of those movies that you can just kind of put on at, like at like a party. or like a screening for B movies. You just throw it on, you can talk over it. You're not going to miss anything, but you
are going to miss some genuinely good jokes.
Yeah.
Some of the jokes are hilarious.
Exactly.
Actually.
Catching snippets out of the side of your eye is going to make you want to kind of like pay attention to this movie. Like it's it's so fucking dumb, but it's so fucking funny. And I think that might be like the best thing you could say about this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie. This is one of my favorite B movies out there. It's not... And I like it for different reasons, because most B movies, when I say like a so bad it's good movie or something, like, oh, this is hilarious. I'm laughing at it because it's terrible or it's incompetent. This, I'm laughing more with the movie because the movie is a comedy and it's genuinely funny.
Yeah.
It's a different thing than like Sleepaway Camp, which is just hilarious because of how weird it is.
This movie succeeds in being a movie.
Yeah.
And it's just weird enough that, like, it adds to that B-movie quality, but it's a genuinely funny movie, and it is entertaining. Like, there's no way that you can say watching a midget get a ninja star to the head and then explode isn't entertaining. You know?
No.
Everybody would find that interesting.
Right. I think if I were to compare this to something we've done, I guess, I would say maybe like Dolomite, because Dolomite is genuinely funny at times, but it's mostly funny because of how terrible it is. This movie, it's less incompetent, but I think it's also funnier than Dolomite. Like, in terms of the writing and the performances, Dolomite is really just hilarious because Rudy Ray Moore
is such a character.
Is so not an actor. Which I guess is kind of Monique Gabriel in this movie, but I don't know. I like it quite a bit. Classic B-movie. It's a Hall of Fame B-movie, first ballot.
Yeah, and I mean, just watching it just to watch Monique Gabriel try to act is amazing. Your heart kind of like...
You say try to act, and yeah, but just watching it from Monique Gabriel, honestly, for everything that she is about. Whether it's the terrible performance...
I'll give it to you.
Or the incredible nudity. It's all there.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I agree.
So, Jim, Dirty Harry or Deathstalker II... Which of these two films do you prefer?
Dude, it's a tough one because I like them both for like different reasons. Obviously,
this is way tougher than it should be. I'll admit that myself. I think you and I are on the same page here.
Yeah, you know what? And I might just have to go with Deathstalker 2 because that's what this podcast is all about. You know what I mean? Dirty Harry's.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. We're all about genuinely good movies too.
Yeah, and Dirty Harry is a genuinely fantastic movie. With so much to offer.
Yeah, it's up there with like The Terminator and King Kong, like some of the best movies we've covered, right?
Yeah,
Deathstalker 2 isn't, but
no, Deathstalker 2
for
is
its own reasons.
But yeah, I think it's just such a pleasure to watch, and everybody should see Deathstalker 2.
Let me ask you a question: do you agree with me that Deathstalker 2 is superior to Deathstalker 1? Completely different movie, completely different tone, everything about it, but do you agree that it's more entertaining?
Yeah, it's more entertaining. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm a big old nerd. I'm a big old sword and sorcery loser. I like Deathstalker 1, but how can you not like Deathstalker 2?
Right.
So how about you, Patrick?
I mean, it's yeah. Well, I'm gonna go with Dirty Harry, but
and I understand it.
It's closer than it should be. It's closer than it has any right to be. Dirty Harry is just an awesome movie. It really is one of my favorites. I think it's amazing. I think that character is so entertaining. I think Eastwood's performance really brings him to life. Scorpio is an incredible villain.
Mm-hmm.
He's terrifying. He is insane. He pays someone to beat the shit out of him. It's just awesome. Like, all of that cat and mouse between Harry and Scorpio is just amazing. Deathstalker 2 is awesome, but it can't hold a candelabra to Dirty Harry, really. You know, but no, I mean, it's good. I would watch both of these movies, you know, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like, again, like, I love them that much. But yeah, that's Dirty Harry. I do just prefer. It's just one of my favorites.
It's a true classic, and like I said, it's a fantastic movie.
So, Jim, how do you think Dirty Harry and Deathstalker 2 stacks up as a double feature?
Well, you know, we could say something, or I could say something about how the absurdity of the life that Clint Eastwood leads, or his morals that are present in, or not present in Dirty Harry.
Talking about Clint Eastwood or the character?
The character. The morality of Dirty Harry, and the absurdity of what he does as part of a police force. We could compare that to the just genuine absurdity of Deathstalker 2. But I feel like this both works and doesn't work as a double feature.
Gun to your head, works or doesn't?
I'm going to have to say doesn't, but that's only because Dirty Harry's too fucking cool. And, like, too serious. Like, there's, like, some genuinely funny scenes in Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
But
it's a serious movie. The movie's taking itself seriously. It's about, you know, not common issues. Well, I guess police brutality is a common issue, but specifically with the serial killer stuff, maybe not common issues, but real world, real life issues. And Deathstalker 2 is about clones and
sorcery.
Gabrielle being hot,
yeah.
and
then
zombies for 30 seconds. What was that about? Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you have like this cold, like it just feels so real, like this cold hard reality almost of watching this poor dead girl being pulled out of a pit in the ground, and then you have all this stupid stuff in Deathstalker 2. It's just kind of hard to float those two together. So I guess I'll have to say it doesn't stack up.
I'm going to say this is good, and here's the thing where I wouldn't say this was, and it's not just because I didn't like the first Deathstalker, I wouldn't say this is a good double feature if you go from Dirty Harry to the first Deathstalker, even if I liked that movie, because the tone is so dark and gritty in the first one, and then the second one is just kind of like a dark, miserable, rapey movie. But this one, Deathstalker 2, is this like bright and cheery and like jovial movie, and it's like, it's kind of a needed cleansing after Dirty Harry. As much as I love that movie, that is like a brutal watch.
Yeah.
And Deathstalker 2 is just, it doesn't take anything seriously, and I think it's refreshing. And yeah, it's a completely different movie, but I do think, you know, in different ways than Clint Eastwood, I think the John Turlesky hero of Deathstalker is just so fun and classic, and, you know, I don't know. I think it works a lot better than it should. I'm all about this double feature. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, now see, like for somebody who like me, I want to wallow in the misery of Dirty Harry. You know,
that's fine.
So I'd want to watch something as like equally as miserable, like Soylent Green for the second feature or something. You know, like a totally miserable, ugly, disgusting
Taxi Driver.
Something, you know. But I totally see where you're coming from, and I respect your opinion because I'm that close. I'm holding my fingers close together in front of my microphone. I'm that close to siding with you.
That's fair. I mean, listen, it's not a conventional double feature by any means, but I enjoy it. I love both movies, and they're completely entertaining for different reasons, but I think one of them weirdly complements the other just by being its like polar opposite almost. Yeah. So work has been getting weird for me lately, which means we're not going to be doing an episode next week.
Oh no.
But we'll be back, and we will be back with George A. Romero's 1978 classic Martin, as well as the 1959 film The Alligator People, the movie that we wish we had seen instead of The Angry Red Planet. Guess what? We're seeing it. We're watching both these movies, and it's going to be a good time. So we hope you join us then. And you got anything else to say?
No, that's it. That's join us for Alligator People. We hope it's as exciting as it sounds.
Classic title. You know, it's like Martin. Oh, it's just the name. It's just someone's first name. Yeah, boring title. Then The Alligator People. It's like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Oh, Alligator People, yeah.